hard working, dedicated. Would like to dedicate this to those who never hate it. Can't nothing hold us down. Can always go another round. Welcome to the underground. Real sports with real sports guys. It's a flex that had his mindset, ready for whatever grind next. My mindset, working with the time left, hard working, dedicated. Would like to dedicate this to those who never hate it. Can't nothing hold us down. Can always go another round. Welcome to the underground. Real sports with real sports guys.
All right, welcome to the Real Sports Guys on the road with RSG here again at the Maui Invitational. You can see the sunshine behind me. We are ready to rock and roll. The thing about it, every time folks talk about, well, you're going to Maui, they're loving it, but they don't understand when you do the Maui Invitational, you go early in the you get in there early in the morning, and then you're out late at night. You don't see the sun, but we're okay with that because we're in that little gym making it happen. But we have to kick it off before we get into our Maui Invitational annual extravaganza. You know, we got to start to show some love. And so right now, before we get in, I wanted to make sure we pay homage to our premier sponsor. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, I got to bring the coach. Most of y'all who checked us out last year, y'all know Coach Cecil. He's in the building. How you doing? You settled in your room? Last year, you in Oahu. Now you in Maui. Now you understand the difference. Remember I told you that? You know, like we
Yep.
we we we're at the we're in Oahu. The food was a little institutional, right? It was university food. You haven't got the food here, but you can already feel the difference of the event, Mao, can't you?
Yeah, there's an electricity here in Maui around this. It was kind of sterile last year, but there was some excitement. But you can tell there's just some electricity around this. Every time I was at the airport, dude just walked up to me and looked at me and said, "Hey, you here for the tournament?" It's like, hey, it's real. Everybody loading the cars up for the tournament, man. He tell me his favorite teams and everything. Londa was looking at me, you know that man? I said, no, I ain't never seen him. But, so yeah, there's an electricity here and it's beautiful. Like I told you, man, I could wake up to this every morning for the rest of my life. But no, I'm excited about it. Glad to be here and appreciate it. And I'm glad to meet you, Dr. Bowman. Devon and I go way back, but you're one person that's always been on his mind and always talking about you, my brother. So I'm really excited to meet you and hear you. And this is just a great time.
Well, hey, we're great to do it, and we couldn't do it without just a lot of support. We're the little engine that could. You know, you walk in and you see Jay Billis, you see Andy Katz, you see all that, and then RSG's in the building. Everybody else is leaving. We're the last ones there, still doing interviews when people are gone. You know, but we couldn't do it without support. And my brother, Dr. PJ Bowman, has been with us on the journey. How you doing, sir?
I'm great. I'm great, Devon. Happy to be here once again. Done it before. It's always a blast. I'm glad to see you are continuing the efforts. And I love you kind of have that grassroots approach.
Yeah.
I think people listen to you. People really do care about your perspective. And you're a sports fan. And I
Yes.
know that from, when we were younger, you not only were really good in sports as a basketball player and football player, but you understand it. You understand the nuances and in the media, I think what you do is super valuable for your listeners.
Yeah, it's great, and I think about, your former teammate who I really have enjoyed watching him, Steve Bartle, and your former roommate, college roommate, doing his work and what he brings to the table, not only his own brand, but the work that I see him doing on television with college sports. And so it feels like we come from a generation. I've had the chance to watch like both you and him kind of grow in your own professions in a way. So I feel like I'm attached to you. And the reason why it fits the kind of partnerships I like to have because it's not only the amazing work that you're doing and we'll learn more about in your journey, in that, people have a chance to even go back in our catalog and kind of hear how you came about and where you're doing what you're doing. But what I think I love about this is that you understand how important these early season tournaments are and these early season games. You played a key role. People don't always remember that. The role that you played, as a member with the Flying Illini back in '89, and y'all were in the Rainbow Classic. Y'all had a number of really important showdowns with Georgia Tech early on that kind of set the tone for it. Y'all were number one after those games. Started out number two, so you understand like this early season kind of thing. What was it like when y'all made y'all run to the Final Four and the role of these early season tournaments to kind of help shape the identity of y'all squad back then?
Yeah, Devon, that's a great question. The season is long when you think
Yeah,
about it in college basketball. You're starting in October and you're ending sometime, actually in early April. Think about
yeah,
it. So we really have to remember that's a process. And where you begin isn't where you end, right? You want to continue to find ways to grow and get better and improve, and in a way, peak at the right time. If your goal is to win a national championship.
yeah,
And that particular year, 1988-89, our team at University of Illinois had the ingredients
yeah,
for that kind of run. And we weren't sure exactly how it was going to play out and how it was going to come together, but we knew we had excellent individual basketball players. The season before, Illinois probably wasn't in the top 10, but that season coming in, we were rated to be good based on the players that we had. The early tournaments, though, when we went to it was the Rainbow Classic. It was in Honolulu. What part of that was team chemistry, not
yeah,
just individual players.
yeah,
So what's going to happen when you're on the court in a real game and we're trying to get a sense of on who we are? So what we found out early on, we won a couple games, maybe Tulsa, maybe we beat University Y, but we did play Georgia Tech and it was a close game. They had
yeah,
NBA players on that team,
yeah,
Brian Oliver and Hammonds. They had really excellent individual players too. But what we did was we really relied on each other, even though we had Kendall Gill, Kenny Battle, Nick Anderson, Steve Bardo, all of these excellent Marcus Liberty individual players. We relied on each other when the game was close. So that I felt was important. Now the other pieces, you don't actually know how are you going to win games, how are you going to compete at the highest level. Some of that then is not just team chemistry, it's style of play.
mm, mm.
So at the beginning of the season, we were not called the fly in the line out.
No.
That that we weren't called that at the beginning. That happened after we started recognizing, hey, we can defend, we can rebound, and we can run. And not only that, we can finish. And so as we started to play teams and that formula, defend, rebound, run, and finish,
Yeah,
started to evolve to the
yeah,
extent that teams had trouble with us in the open court. But it started with defense. Why defense? Because, and we didn't know this at the beginning of the season, we never really thought about it until we started matching up with players on the other team. We had a lot of guys 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" at the tallest, right? So that was outside of me, right? I'm 5'10", but we had these guys. So what the defensive, I think, strategy, ultimately, we could switch
yeah,
on all screens,
yeah,
we could pressure, and so we put a lot of different looks on had tall guards too on the opponent. So that was one of the styles of on defense that set the tone for getting putting teams in a tough position, getting rebounds and running. So I would say that was the beginning of our understanding of our team chemistry, not just our individual talent, and also our style of play.
yeah.
And then that really just carried out throughout the season.
Yeah, I remember just being amazed because the point guards back then were at 5'10" to like 6'2", typical point guard. And then, but I was struck by, Bardo playing point, like that six, whatever, that big guard. You start to see that a little bit Houston in the NBA back then. And it was this idea of this big guard at that time might have been a small forward, might have been whatever, but handling the ball, defending at the point, and your ability to switch. I remember Kendall gets hurt, right? But then I remember when we caught y'all, because I had a chance to go see y'all play up in Madison in the old arena. It was like the Boston Guard. It was hot in there. I thought I seen the devil playing was the referee in there. But y'all, y'all were battling. Y'all were battling up in there. Y'all had some battles, but that group was y'all could switch everything. Y'all could rebound. It was amazing to watch y'all play up in person.
Yeah, we definitely had a brand of basketball,
Yeah,
and it was certainly
yeah,
in a way what set the tone not only for that season, but even thinking about our legacy
yeah,
in college basketball
Yeah.
and even at the University of Illinois as, one of the better teams that's ever played at the university. And a lot of that, once again, wasn't just the Final Four finish
Yeah.
and the great season that we had, but that style of play, which fans loved.
Yeah.
People grew to really enjoy our team, and
Yeah.
part is because we played really hard.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
the other part of it too. We played really hard, and when you play hard and then you put these other pieces together, good things happen.
So you saying some stuff. I know Cecil's over there making notes because he probably said all these things out there about that team. I know you had a chance to observe that team as well.
Oh my gosh. The thing that always fascinated me was the way they had that size and could move.
Yeah.
You know, like you were saying, TJ, you could switch off on anybody. It didn't matter, which draws havoc on offenses for people. But we're so athletic. I mean, I like everything you said because they could get to the rim. I mean, it wasn't just big, and they could get to the rim, they could finish to get to the free throw line and then come back and do it all over again, which for 40 minutes for another team is just depressing. I mean, it's just, they get worn down over time. And I saw that with that team too. You guys just wore people down over time. And that, I've always said my ideal team is 6'5". No offense, because I was 6'2" point guard, but outside point guard, you give me four other people, even a center that's 6'6", maybe 6'7", that are athletes. That's my ideal team. And in Division III, that's a national championship. Okay, but
It was interesting because we would wear teams down when you score that basket at the rim. I mean dunks too sometimes.
Yes.
Kenny Battle, Nick Anderson, Kendall Gill. I mean dunks with authority, and then we want to do it all over again.
all over
It's
again.
almost like a form of intimidation too.
Absolutely.
Like we didn't really come out to be intimidating, but when you play that hard, when you can defend with that flexibility, and when you can finish with authority and say let's go, and you ready, it becomes almost intimidating to the other team. And so I feel like that actually was important in tight games as well when you get down to the end.
Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question?
Go ahead.
I'm curious about this. When did that switch go off? Was that the coach? Was that the team and the coach? When did that say, this is who we are, let's do this? I mean, was there that moment in time? And again, did it come from the coaches? Did it come from a collaborative thing within the team? How did that come about, do you think?
So it was more organic during the season, and it wasn't a predetermined strategy. We were playing more conventional defense, call out screens, fight through the screen, man-to-man defense, play hard, go over top the screen, don't go. So we're playing conventional defense. It happened because early in the Big Ten season, especially, you're playing a lot of teams that screen frequently, and they screen very effectively. When you're playing Purdue or you're playing Indiana
Yeah.
or you're playing teams like that, you're playing Minnesota. So because they were so effective at screening, they almost force you to switch. And when we switch, we actually recognize that, hey, Lowell Allenton can guard that two guard. Marcus Liberty, who is 6'8", can guard that point guard for this possession. Steve Bardo, who's 6'6", 6'7", can guard a power forward. Could guard Laurie Vaught for that possession. So we started to recognize, actually, it wasn't by design, that we actually are better off now. Let's just switch up front and not necessarily play the conventional fight through the screen strategy. So that was a more organic process.
That makes sense.
This is amazing to be able to do it. I always like, because you see so much of that now. I watched Duke last night playing against Arizona, and they got that same setup. They're great defensively, and they can switch. They don't have a problem if they have to switch. You got people like Cooper Flag, who athletic, can stay in front of folks. You got the young man from Sudan who played in the Olympics, played against talent. They can move their feet. And you see them put pressure. They make possessions tougher. They took love out of the game, and so it's as much as people say the game changes. They say this about football. They say there are some fundamentals to basketball that all great teams do, right? When it calls for it, and you can see some of the things that y'all did play out with some of these teams today, because they have great athleticism, because they, some of the bigs have grown up handling the ball, playing in space. It affects them on defense. So, we'll see a lot of that. You start to look at UConn and look at some of these teams we're going to see this week.
Hmm.
They're very strong with those principles and ways that they work, and things. They're able to adjust on the fly in the
I,
ways that
I,
we've seen y'all.
and I'll add one more thing too on
Yep.
offense because teams needed to prepare for us. Part of the preparation was if you miss the other team, if you miss, you have to sprint back on defense, not
Yes.
Hmm.
run, not jog, sprint, and not only sprint back, but you need to protect the rim
Yep.
when you go back in defense. So what that did for us on offense is if we didn't get a real good, easy, nice look at the basket, they were so underneath the basket, so close to the basket. If we ever just kicked it out, we had a lot of open shots. So Nick Anderson turned into a good 3-point shooter.
Hmm.
Gil turned into a nice 3-point shooter. I could hit some nice open shots. In part, that was a byproduct of the teams that we played needing to have a game plan, which is sprint back and protect the rim, which actually gave us a lot of open looks on the
Yep.
three-point line. So we
Yep.
ended up having a nice balanced perimeter game too on offense as a byproduct of that.
Yeah. And I always got to say, and you gave BJ Armstrong 31 in Iowa City. It was that Michigan love. You got to remind
That
me.
was he's a BJ from Detroit Brother Rice
Yeah.
High School. Yeah,
You had to let him know. Tonight there's only one from Michigan that can do this, not you. Well, let's talk about, for a long time it was, Bowman Medical Group, which I know you still have, but you are really working on this new project with TMS and Depression Center of Beverly Hills. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with this center and why it's important?
yeah. So it's an extension of what we've been doing for a long time, which is really trying to provide high quality care and access for people who are dealing with depression. And depression is super common, unfortunately, right? It's a common mental health condition, and COVID really uncovered
Mhm.
how much depression it really affects people. I mean, it was an exacerbating factor, but one of the keys that came out of that is depression is common, not only common but even in young people, right? We're talking about adolescents now,
Mhm.
college age folks, and then beyond. Our conventional treatment options, which is therapy, maybe medication management, are effective to some extent and help, but they're not necessarily able to get patients all the way better in every case. So there really needed to be some other treatment options. So with TMS, it stands for transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's a device which delivers some magnetic stimulation to a particular part of the brain that helps that brain region release the kind of neurochemicals that are important for improving mood and decreasing depression. So it's a non-pharmacologic modality. So I look at it as an important upfront treatment option for
Mhm.
patients. There's therapy, which is super important, whether you have depression or not. I think talk therapy is something that if you have a dentist, maybe you should have a talk therapist. I mean, it could be that much of a public health perspective on
Mhm.
maintaining our mental health and pursuing well-being. Medication management in the event that your symptoms are interfering with your ability to function. And then also knowing that there's a non-pharmacologic option called TMS, which is outpatient. It's there are no side effects associated with it.
Mhm.
You don't need anything anesthesia or anything like that. It's a straightforward treatment. So that's something we've been doing for about 7 or 8 years. There's more information about it now. There's better access because insurance companies cover this treatment now.
Mhm.
In the past, they didn't. So Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, they all have coverage policies for it. So if you wanted to take a non-pharmacologic, non-medication pursuit for treating your depression, you can have TMS covered through your insurance company, which is great. So it's important awareness that treating depression, it's a very important public health perspective on it, treating it early, and then also that we have these growing options as well.
Yeah, and I know, and we were talking beforehand. I know Cecil is a lot about your role as the dean of students, and you were saying that you're dealing with students who have to leave campus more related to the episodes and symptoms described by Dr. Bowman than ever before. Part of it coming out of the pandemic. I know you have some thoughts a little bit about this as well.
Yeah, we a couple of things. This is really a real big interest with me, but we saw a lot of this even pre-COVID. We saw this coming down, especially for a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, attributed to a lot of things for students, along with us just not paying attention to it probably early on as much as we do now. And definitely after COVID, we've had an increase in the number of students that just take take it. I mean, like again, anxiety, depression, and being away from home is part of it. All the things that go into it are part of it. The other thing that and I'm really interested in this is because we always seem to have trouble from a pharmaceutical side, from the pharmacology side, where can't get for some reason, this medication doesn't work, increase this medication, balance this medication, take them off this, put them on that. And so the students aren't really sure what they're doing, what they're taking, and they just stop taking it all together, and have to go home and get balanced out again. And it's like, are the meds really doing what they're supposed to be doing for them? Or are they part of the problem? Okay. And of course, students that don't want to take the meds because they put them in a state that they don't want to be in necessarily. And so we hear a lot of that too. And if there's another way to go, I've been thinking, is there something else we can do besides the medications for students? They can visit their counselors and those types of things. But is there something else that we need to do from an active standpoint that can maybe help the students? Because if we don't, it's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to become problematic for those students. Is I think we still got 2 more years of the COVID thing to even for it to settle down. So yeah, I mean, this is really of interest because too much of this seems to be like we can't find what the issue is, and so let's just take them out of school.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's find them another doctor. Let's find them another medication. So yeah, I mean, this is very, very important to hear about, and from that standpoint, and I know Devon's going to get into this, but it's happening more and more with our athletes too. In terms of their development and their growth and their decision making and things they have to deal with more and more now with all the things that are out there for them.
Yeah, I want to kind of take it in that because PJ, you and I have talked a lot about this, and I think I think that it's one of the things you just said, see. So I think even the NCAA paid attention a little bit more as they went through the pandemic and could see the effects. When people are used to having a routine, that routine gets disrupted, particularly with athletes who are creatures of habit in terms of how they handle their bodies, their kind of how their bodies train for a season that then gets disrupted. But we've seen more professional athletes come forward talking about dealing with depression. I know you've done some work both on the professional and college level. How are you? What are you seeing in terms of the infrastructure that's growing around that, and then what are you seeing in terms of additional needs as we think about supporting our athletes both at the professional? I mean, I know we can go on to the high school level, but I focus on the professional and college level.
Yeah, it's important to have some dialogue around it because it's athletes are, I just would say, like everybody else in some way, have sort of vulnerabilities and predispositions and at risk for mental health conditions too. They are excellent at a sport and they excel and they achieve. It doesn't necessarily mean they aren't going to struggle potentially with something else. And mental health conditions are definitely something that they struggle with all the time. And you can go back to high school. I mean, I think at some level, maybe it's not focused on, but there are some precursors to these things that you can probably go back and start to see, okay, when in the epidemiology shows that oftentimes people who struggle with depression later in life, they notice some disruption in, say, mood and whatnot, maybe even as adolescents, right? Maybe not a full-blown episode, but factors. So trying to address it early is important. And I think at a high school level, part of that is social connection. Some of that is your peer group. Some of that is the support that you get. Some of that is sort of the developmental understanding of where am I at and where am I going. So that's why COVID really disrupted that. But also another thing that disrupts that to a degree, it's a correlation, is social media.
Mhm.
That can have an influence on how these factors affect younger people, especially, I think. So I feel like this is an area that could be identified. Now, in college, if you're an athlete, if you're fortunate enough to be to receive a Division I scholarship, or I'm thinking about a program that might have resources. There are some resources that are increasing and growing at the college level for mental health, wellness support that can be offered as a resource to players from the beginning.
Mhm.
And I think, to me, that's the approach. To use kind of the dental strategy or perspective, you don't really wait till you get the cavities
Mhm.
to say, hey, let's go find a dentist,
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
right? Because then you're doing a lot of repair work, which is fine, but
I know
it's
that.
better to do some
I know that.
versus not. Yeah. So the idea in mental health is you want to kind of start looking at things up front. Learn ways that you can help support your own wellness. So it's like flipping it from an illness model to a wellness model,
Mhm.
and learning how to manage wellness from the beginning.
Mhm.
Okay. And learning, especially when you're young, because that could be part of your lifestyle now. That could be something you carry into adulthood. So having resources, but it's hard to do that on your own. You oftentimes need coaching for that,
Yep.
right? So there's like you have athletic trainers, you have nutritionists, maybe, you have people that help with rehab. There should be a resource for mental health to help promote wellness. So at some of the major college programs have some research like that. In the NBA, which I actually worked with the Detroit Pistons last year, and so I was part of their mental health team,
Mhm.
and that's up front. So it's a resource that's provided at the beginning, and different teams may have different approaches with that, but the idea is that it's a resource, and honestly, the players appreciate it and they utilize it, and it's a need. There's another side to it. There's the performance side,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
that's the mental health component too.
Yep.
And there are stakeholders in the performance side,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right? Not just the players.
Yeah.
And so those are resources that are important, that are provided, and players are interested in excelling and managing um, rough patches or slumps or things that might be happening, or they want to be playing at their highest level. And I think that's important. And then there's kind of the other mental health piece that comes up with anxiety, and
Mhm.
I'm overthinking, or I'm feeling a bit stuck in some ways, or I'm
Mhm.
feeling my motivation is dipping, or I'm feeling a bit more depressed. I'm having a hard time getting a sense for, why am I even doing this? Sometimes it can even get to that point where they question, should I even play basketball anymore?
Mhm.
Okay, which
Mhm.
is hard for people sometimes to believe that an NBA player who's on, they have these high levels of achievement throughout their entire life might even
Yeah.
start to question something like that.
Mhm.
So these are real issues, and the NBA has taken an approach that is sort of mandated that each team has mental health resources in place up front, and then the teams have some flexibility in terms of how they set the infrastructure up for that. But I think that's great
Mhm.
to know that it's at that level, and if it's at that level, then it actually encourages that sort of support even at younger ages,
Mhm.
if the resources are available even in high school.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And as you and I don't see, so you might have a question here. Um, you know, there are also cultural dynamics. You and I grew up in, people would think, even grow up in a place like Ann Arbor or whatever. There's some dynamics you see underneath where people are coming from situations where, you don't go do things unless your leg's broken, right? So
Exactly.
there's cultural dynamics in terms of how people might see the value of this that then manifests in how the athletes decide to address these issues, right? If that's not something that's part of your upbringing, you don't go to the dentist unless your tooth is broken, right?
Exactly.
You and I know those people. You and I know those situations, right? We've seen them up close and personal, right? So how do you help negotiate that and build, because that's part of the work is with the broader family support system around this stuff? How does that happen more?
So I think it is important to trace it back
Yeah.
to ways in which we learned how to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And where's the source of that information? What were the environmental factors? What were the influences? What did we witness? What did we see? What were we taught? And I
Yeah.
think you definitely want to go back. The other aspect is just continuing to remind folks that there's a lot of stigma. There's more stigma to see a mental health person than to see a dentist, even though there could be some resistance there.
Yeah.
There's still the stigma associated with it, and so just helping understand that the stigma is getting better, but part of the solution is destigmatizing it for yourself,
Yeah.
right? Independent about what other people are doing. So really think about the aspects of the process that you can control. So then giving people that empowerment, that sense of like, okay, I can control the part about if I am not feeling well, who am I going to reach out to?
Yeah.
So then sometimes that's identifying just even one person, right? Just one person. And you don't have to then say, oh, I'm, totally open minded to talking about what's ailing me or what I'm suffering from, but just opening it up to say who is the one person that you can talk to. There can be other components to that. Some people grew up in single family homes, or they're not even accustomed to having a father, maybe as an example, around. And so they might even have trouble with other male role models, and they don't want to display any weakness at all to coaches or other male. So there's a lot of other, not only cultural, social, economic, family dynamics, a lot of potential barriers and resistance in this, but really trying to shift the perspective to this is about your self-worth. This is about who you are. This is about valuing yourself. This is about finding ways to be a healthier individual. This is bigger than basketball or football or baseball. And you have a lot of room to do things that are beneficial and positive for yourself. So really, I think that motto of switching it to well-being,
Yeah.
and that can eventually sort of resonate when an individual says, would I rather be in a poor state of well-being or in a more positive state of well-being?
Wow.
And people almost always say, I'd rather be in a more positive state of well-being. Okay, what are some of the small little action steps I can take even today to go in the direction of more positive well-being? And start with small things, and then you incrementally build on those things. So that's it for an example of one approach.
Well, hey man, it's been good to be on the journey. I feel like we've been on this life journey, brother. And I know, I've appreciated just your family and that connection. And just being on this, we're gonna work towards something where we're gonna be doing this from the same room in Maui. We got to work that out. I got to get started a little bit
All
earlier
right.
and get you here. We can all sit in the same room and get you in the
I
gym.
love
Get you
that.
around. Now you might get you in the gym. Somebody might pull you on the court and want you to shoot some more, but we can't let them do that to you. You know, you might hit 30 in a row, and they might next thing you know you got you an NIL deal. The kind of money you would have made today with the way you shoot, I'm like, my goodness.
I mean, NIL was serious.
Yeah.
With the recruit that just from Belleville, the quarterback
Oh
who
yeah.
just decided to go to Michigan and sort of LSU. I'm sure that there's some NIL component to that.
There's an
Oh
NIL
yeah.
component to it, so so we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'd love to have you come back at some point and talk a little bit. Cecil and I want to have a deeper discussion with you around the impact of NIL and transfer portal. That would be a discussion we want to have with you. So we'll get on your calendar because we want to take a deeper dive into that discussion in terms of how these young folks are trying to navigate the pressures associated with those kind of decisions. So that's going to be on our future here coming up here pretty soon. I also want to let the listeners know that as part of this, Dr. Bowman they'll also be supporting our RSG Tourney Challenge. So when we get to that March Madness, you'll see the brand on that as well. And so maybe that'll be an opportunity to revisit this conversation. But enjoy your time. I know you hanging out in the ATL. Enjoy your time there, man. And we appreciate you being on this journey with us, brother.
Absolutely, Devon. Like always, man, pleasure to see you. I feel like whenever I see you, like no time has passed. It feels like it was just yesterday.
That's right.
Support you. You're doing great things, man. Love you. Cecil, pleasure to meet you as well.
You too.
Yeah,
You as well, for sure.
looking forward to other opportunities to get together.
Okay.
All right, y'all, stay with us. We're gonna have a lot of content coming out. Press conference tomorrow, and then we get into the business. They don't play at Maui. This is not as Coach Tomlin would say. There are gonna be teams running away from the smoke. There are gonna be teams running to the smoke. We're gonna see here pretty soon. We'll see y'all on the other side, y'all.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hard working, dedicated, would like to dedicate this to those who never hate it. Can't nothing hold us down, can always go another round. Welcome to the underground, real sports, with real sports guys. It's a flex that had his mindset, ready for whatever grind next. My mindset, working with the time left. Hard working, dedicated, would like to dedicate this to those who never hate it. Can't nothing hold us down, can always go another round. Welcome to the underground, real sports, with real sports guys.